It's Football Friday. There's a lot of stuff to discuss. There's some controversy in the NBA, of course. There's Odell Beckham Jr. in Cleveland. There's some college football ratings. There's Tim Tebow. He's looking very, very sharp this morning, I must confess.
Always.
He was actually on the bird before the show, talking about coconut oil or something like that. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that was about, Tim Tebow. We're going to discuss that too.
Stephen A., let me just be honest. It's been 2 weeks since we've talked, and I've missed my friend. I'm glad to be back.
Hold on. Getting emotional right now. Go to break point. Y'all see me cry.
True tears.
My inner brain.
Oh, I have to stay focused. So much to say, though, to you two. Breaking news on Odell Beckham's 29th birthday. Happy birthday to him. The Cleveland Browns have been working with OBJ's reps to negotiate an agreement to release the wide receiver. Sources have confirmed to ESPN he is expected to be released in the next few days. The Browns are converting Beckham's base salary into signing bonus to lower his cap number in attempt to save money. Yahoo Sports first reported this. Beckham under contract for 2 more seasons. That has no guaranteed money left on his deal. The NFL's trade deadline was Tuesday, so Cleveland cannot trade him until the start of the 2022 league year. As for on the field, after ranking top 5 in the NFL in targets, receptions, and receiving yards per game through his first 5 seasons of his career, Odell has seen drops considerably since joining the Browns in 2019. Hi, guys. How we doing? Hey.
Hey.
Tim, it is great to have you back, and I want to start with you, sir. Who do you think looks worse in this situation? Is it the Browns or Odell?
Well, I think both. I don't think either one walks away looking very clean, but I think Odell walks away with a little bit more mud on his face just because of I think a few of the ways that these things have been handled. I get it when people are at odds. They can't see eye to eye, but I think that needs to be handled internally. I think it needs to be handled like grown-ups sitting down at a table saying, hey, this is how I feel. This is what I would like, and not in front of everybody. It doesn't need to be poured out in front of everybody. Hey, when you're on a team, I know it's not a real family, but it's a football family. Handle it like a family behind closed doors. And I know you're at odds, but you're at odds with Baker, you're at odds with the Browns. But go inside, handle it, and if you need to break away from the Browns, then do that. But I think all of this could have been handled inside of the football facility. And I think taking it to social media and taking it to all the different ways, I just don't think it's the right way for it to be handled.
Tim Tebow, ladies and gentlemen, he just doesn't get it. No matter how many times I try to tell him, so I'm going to try it again. Hey, Tim Tebow, they're not you. You're absolutely right. If you're the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, of course you handle this. You handle it in perfect fashion because Tim Tebow is a special guy. That's why he's my friend. Okay, this is important to recognize. This is important. That's you, because you're going to put team first. You're going to be committed to the bottom line, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, because clearly Odell Beckham Jr. with his father putting something on social media and stuff like that, that is not the way to go. I don't condone that, but not by any stretch of the imagination. But I do believe this. There is an ego issue when it comes to the quarterback position in Cleveland with that particular wide receiver. You do see a guy, a level of swag that comes with Baker Mayfield that says, I'm the man, I'm the guy here. And usually quarterbacks are in the National Football League, and so you can't completely knock him for doing that. But when you've got a talent like Odell Beckham Jr. on your squad, and you see the precipitous drop in the amount of times that he's been targeted. The last game, he's targeted 1 time the entire game. A game where you lost to the Chargers and the score was 47-42. He's getting targeted like 3 times. Something's wrong with that picture. Then you hear he's not even getting the ball thrown to him in practice. You're hearing during the game time, you're looking away. There's something personal in that particular relationship that's going on. Clearly, Kevin Stefanski has something to do with it in terms of his play calling or lack thereof. It could be a lot of different issues. And again, you're right. I'm not condoning if Odell Beckham Jr. has anything to do with it. And we believe he does, because we don't believe his father did that for nothing. He had something to do with that. But in the end, I do think that you got to take into consideration. Odell hasn't been in any trouble. Since he's been in Cleveland, he's been relatively quiet. We all recognize that. This is the first time he's ever been involved in any kind of controversy since he's arrived in Cleveland.
No doubt.
I think we've got to pay attention to that, too.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm an Odell fan. I love his talent. I even like his personality. I've been around Odell multiple times, and I like him. I like his swagger. I like his it factor ability. I don't like the way this was handled, but I really hope he gets another great shot, a great opportunity, and he can make the most of it. But I think the one thing I would disagree is when you say from the quarterback position that it's personal. It might be personal now. I don't know that it was personal in the past. And by the way, I just got this from Jay Mills and Next Gen Stats. Odell in his rankings of getting open is 126 out of 154. And out of the 5 Browns receivers, he's 5th. So listen, I believe in his talent. I believe he can get back to being the Odell that's making the one-handed catches. But that stat is staggering a little bit.
That stat is staggering a little bit. And I didn't mean to imply that the quarterback position overall, it's that. I'm talking about in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield and the Odell Beckham Jr. dynamic. That has clearly been about egos for quite some time now. And I think it's chickens coming home to roost. We're all seeing that now really, really unfold before our very eyes. There's a personal disconnect. I didn't say animosity, hatred. I'm not going anything like that, Tim. I'm saying there's a personal disconnect that you usually don't expect between a receiver and a quarterback of you with that kind of talent that's happening right now.
But Stephen, I just wish, for the sake of having a team that could truly, I really believe, if this team came together, I really believe they could make a run at a Super Bowl. They have so much talent, but it would need Baker, it would need the Browns from the top all the way down, and it would need Odell Beckham to all be on the same page. And I really believe if all of them said, you know what, we're just going to humble ourselves a little bit, put team first, I really believe they could make a run at it. And I think that's what's disappointing about the whole situation to me.
Absolutely. Let me jump in here. And on that note, pride comes before the fall. I always talk to you about these egos, Stephen A.
People really need to get their egos together. They really do.
Absolutely.
Really do. Absolutely.
The Browns released a statement just now that Odell Beckham Jr. will no longer play for Cleveland. So obviously we knew this was coming, but this just came down. Tim, I'll start with you. What do you think would be a good fit for him? Which team?
I think it's Vegas. I think it's Derek Carr and the Raiders. That's the first one that popped in my head. I think you have a really talented quarterback that's underrated. You have a really good tight end that's going to help take pressure. Some other guys, but also with the loss of Henry Ruggs, you might be able to step in, learn the offense, and really bring something special to the offense from day one. Now, if I was Odell and I wasn't just worried necessarily about more catches, but a championship, I tell you what, LA Rams would be very intriguing for me as well. And I'm not, I know they got other receivers, but man, you step in there, you might be able to take that place of Deshaun Jackson, a deep threat there. I mean, you have a team that is loaded, and they added Von Miller. I mean, come on. If it's me, I look at the Rams and saying, hey, I might be able to be the final chip to a championship.
Tim, that's where I was going. My reaction is, okay, LA Rams, what you waiting for? Go get that brother. That's my first choice before the Raiders. Raiders are a good choice. I get where you're coming from, particularly with the tragedy involving, Henry Ruggs III, what happened there. Definitely that Las Vegas is a viable landing spot. But I would put the Rams ahead of them and the Green Bay Packers for the reasons you mentioned about the Rams. The Green Bay Packers also have additional targets, but Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, assuming both of them are there with Devontae Adams. Obviously, they got their slew of receivers, but particularly with Tunyon going down now with the ACL injury, even though that's a tight end, I'm saying, add an additional dude like an Odell Beckham Jr. because who's throwing him the football? It would be that brother, Aaron Rodgers. And so you got Aaron Rodgers or Matthew Stafford. Forgive me, I like Derek Carr. He's not a scrub. He can play. I know this. But if I got to choose between playing with Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, or Derek Carr's going to be third on that list. And let's not leave out Kansas City because they could use some help alongside Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce as well. Even though Pringle is there, I would say to you, Kansas City would come to my mind as well. Those three teams to me would be before the Raiders.
I think they're all great teams. I think something else to keep in mind is for Odell, being in a position where he might feel at home. I know Odell likes LA. I've seen him there multiple times at multiple events. I know he spends a lot of time there. So that might be a place where, he just could feel, hey, I'm more at home. I got more friends, more family around me, more support. And that does matter.
I'm going to throw out two more. I know one you guys are going to shoot down, but I could see Tom Brady landing him in the Bucs. I'm just saying. And I know he already has a ridiculous amount of weapons, but I could absolutely see that happening. It seems like Brady always pulls out. But I have a real one for you. How about this, guys? And I know city-wise, maybe it's not the most exciting, but what about New England? I mean, Mac Jones, rookie, bright future. He's been pretty solid.
Wow.
He's been accurate, and you get to play for Bill Belichick, who we know's a fan of Odell Beckham Jr.
Okay. See, Molly.
Listen, I think the Patriots are going to make a run at the playoffs.
Slick.
I think they're getting better. So I don't think it's terrible, option at all. I don't know that he would be interested in it. I think those other ones that have been brought up, he would be more intrigued with, just from the little bit that I know of his personality and maybe what he's thinking. But I think the Patriots are a team that's getting better. I think Mac Jones is playing by far the best out of any rookie quarterback and probably playing in the top 15 in the NFL in quarterbacks. I think he's only going to get better. And I do think they need an elite receiver, and he might have a chance to step in really, really early and help that team.
The reason why I said Molly was getting slick is because you're giving us the answer after you asked the question. And I'm like, no. Because
I know you. I know what you're going to say.
Okay, here's the deal.
Shoot it down.
Tom Brady, if Tom Brady shouldn't have a problem, but if I'm Mike Evans, if I'm Chris Godwin, if I'm Antonio Brown and rescue, I'd have a problem if you brought Odell Beckham Jr. I'd be like, wait a minute, we barely getting enough passes to begin with. We win and we go with it. But don't bring in another person to take additional targets from us. No, Molly.
But can't you see Brady pulling that off?
Wait a minute. And then
with
the Patriots, yeah, maybe. I don't see it, though. Yeah. But then with the Patriots, they're not there yet. And I think with Odell Beckham Jr., he needs to be a place where offensively, I'm talking about offensively, they're there. He's not going to have any trepidation if Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, or Matthew Stafford is throwing him the football. That might be the case with a rookie quarterback in Bill Belichick's run-centric system. We have to be careful about that.
Tim, let me throw out another question to you here. So obviously we all know Odell Beckham Jr. is a special talent and a big personality, right? What quarterback do you think he would be the best fit with, though? Like when we talk about a guy, Tom Brady, we know they'd have good chemistry. Tom would know how to deal with him. Even to some extent, you could argue that Eli Manning did as well, because that's when he had his best numbers before Eli started to decline in his career with age. Which of those quarterbacks do you think would be the best fit?
Well, I agree with you on both of those quarterbacks, and I think Brady would know how to handle it. I also think that Aaron Rodgers would do a really good job with it. I think because he has also such a big personality, I think that he would do a good job of becoming friends and working with him. I also think Andy Reid is used to that as well, and Patrick Mahomes would do a great job. And I think Odell would have such respect for what they've accomplished that I think you would really see him kind of just gravitate and be another one of the guys versus the guy. And I think that would be really helpful for him and the organization he goes to.
I think that this misnomer out there about Odell Beckham Jr. needing to be the guy, I don't think that's what he feels. He just needs to feel like an active, productive part of something that's working. There is a difference, okay?
Yeah.
If somebody is getting 10 receptions for 150 yards and Odell Beckham Jr. gets 8 receptions for 100 yards.
Be able to help with the right coverages. And that's where I think really Aaron Rodgers could be really special with him. And I also think Kansas City, because their offense is so spread. I do think you would be able to get Odell the ball fast in his hands, get him going early in games. Andy Reid is a master at that. He's a master at getting Travis Kelce involved in the game. He's a master at all the different guys. Tyreek Hill involved in the game. Sammy Watkins, when he's there, involved in the game. And, he even has a plan to say, okay, this is how we're going to get this guy going early in the game because we know we're going to need him late in the game. That's also where I think it could be really special if Odell could fit in a system like that where they said, okay, early in the game, we know these 3 plays. We're going to get him the ball to get him going early because I do think Odell can still be so special in the right system with the right mindset and the right team around him that is propelling him where he feels part of the team and he feels that he's honestly a special part of that team.
Yeah, and we know the Saints made calls about him, and I know someone else who would love to have him. That would be Lamar Jackson. But I want to transition to the other team, and that's Cleveland. And, Tim, I'll come to you being a former quarterback. I know Baker Mayfield's a franchise quarterback, but do you think this is a guy, or maybe Stephen A. doesn't believe that, but is this a guy that could lead a team to a Super Bowl, Baker? Do you still believe that?
I think he could lead the Browns team to a Super Bowl, right? Because it's different. With the Browns, they have a great pass rush. They have a pretty good defense. They have a really good running game. Baker's pretty good off of play action. I think he's getting better. I think he's handled a lot of ups and downs, being the number one pick, throwing a good amount of interceptions one year, coming back, making the playoffs, making an awesome run at it last year, playing his best in the playoffs, giving the Chiefs everything that they could handle last year. And honestly, probably should have had even more plays if some of his playmakers were even stepped up more in that game in the playoffs against the Chiefs. And so I think you look at it and you say, you know what? With maybe one or two pieces and their running backs healthy, I think they could make a run at it. And so I do think he's a franchise quarterback that in the Chiefs system with their running game could make a run at the Super Bowl.
Let me say this before I go any further about answering this question in regards to Baker Mayfield. I've never felt more positive about him than I do today. How he handled Odell Beckham Jr.'s father doing what he did on social media, he's got to be given credit for that. Baker Mayfield is known as a guy that's relatively candid, will speak his mind, no BS, whatever the case may be. He could have really, really went in. And he could have embarrassed some people. He could have spoke up in self-defense on his own behalf, and he did no such thing. And it reminded me in a flip side, because I'm a fan of John Bones Jones and the UFC. And I remember years ago when he had went after, Daniel Cormier and was so it just went at him in a very disrespectful way. And then when he got in some trouble, DC could have really ripped him and didn't do it. And that kind of stuff really, really resonates with me. And I think Baker Mayfield deserves a lot of credit for the class he showed. Having said all of that, do I think the Browns could win with him? Yes. Do I think he could lead the Browns? No. Their running game could do it. You understand? Their pass rush led by Myles Garrett could do it. If Jarvis Landry and them brothers find a way to get them, they could do it. You just look at too many elements with the Cleveland Browns, and the one question mark is Baker Mayfield. You don't really have a whole bunch of question marks surrounding the Cleveland Browns. It's usually what can Odell do? I'm sorry, not Odell, what Baker Mayfield can do. Can he lead you to the Super Bowl? Can he be the number one reason you're going to be there? No. But can he help you? Sure.
That's totally fair, Stephen. I get that point, and I agree with it. But how many guys can? That's what's even more important is you can't just go replace him with someone else that can. I mean, there's 7, 8 guys right now maybe you could look at in the NFL that you could say, hey, you know what? I really believe that guy could lead a team there. Lead a team, not just be the quarterback of a really good team and that team would lead that quarterback, but a quarterback that will lead. I mean, you got a couple young guys now. You could probably look at Justin Herbert, right? You could look at Lamar. All those guys are stepping up. Josh Allen, those guys are kind of coming into their own. But after that, where are you going to find the next guys? And I think that next guy is Baker, and I think he's, in the middle of it right now. And I think the way he's handled the last few weeks, I think it only gives his team more trust in him. And if he can find a way to win some of the big games, I think he'll get even more buy-in from his teammates.
Personality-wise, he did build some trust because they watched the way he handled it.
Yeah.
And he could have been a lot worse, and he wasn't. He really could have.
No, he was above board. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Adam Schefter is going to join us after the break with much more insight on this Odell Beckham. Good morning. Welcome back to First Take. Breaking news. The Cleveland Browns have released Odell Beckham Jr. Browns GM Andrew Berry releasing the following statement. After careful consideration, internal discussions, and conversations with Odell and his representation, we've determined that it is in the best interest of all parties involved that Odell no longer play for the Cleveland Browns. We appreciate all his efforts and contributions while in Cleveland, but we've just reached a point where it is best that we move forward as a team without Odell. We are finalizing the process of granting Odell his release, and we wish him well as he continues his career. ESPN Browns reporter Jake Trotter joining us now. Jake, thank you so much for being with us here. A quick turnaround. Tell me this, Jake. What went wrong between Odell and the Browns?
Baker could not get Odell the ball on the one hand, and then on the other, Odell could not get to the spots on the field that Baker needed him to be to get him the ball. I mean, it's sort of inexplicable, but it's really that simple. And it never got much better from the time that they were first together in 2019 up through Sunday's loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have a lot of data at this point that Baker Mayfield is a better quarterback without Odell. I mean, his QBR drops by almost 30 points throwing to wide receivers other than Odell Beckham. And that doesn't mean that Odell's not a dynamic playmaker. Baker would be the first one to tell anyone that. The chemistry never worked. They were never a good fit. And now they have an opportunity to win apart because together they were just never going to win.
Jake Trout, appreciate you being on the show. Let me ask you this question, sir. If you listen to folks close to Odell Beckham Jr., their mentality is that he's open. This is a man that he's never developed the chemistry with in Baker Mayfield. It was never a priority for him to be that guy that Baker Mayfield wanted to throw the football to. Did you ever get the impression, covering that locker room, that there were others outside of Odell Beckham Jr. that felt that way about the relationship that existed between Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr.?
What's so strange about this situation, and I think everybody's waiting for the stories about, discontent between Baker and Odell off the field. That has not been the case at all. They have been friends. I think that's why it was so stunning to Baker that the way it unfolded this week and that he didn't hear from Odell because they were tied. And listen, they struggled on the field, but Odell Beckham for a long time was one of Baker's staunchest defenders, and it went the other way as well. And you're right, Odell was open. I mean, I go back to that Denver Broncos game in 2019, the 4th and 4 Cleveland season's on the line. Baker wants to go to Odell Beckham, and Odell Beckham is open on that play. If you go back and watch, he runs down the sideline. The problem is Odell was supposed to run across the middle of the field. At least that's what Baker was expecting. And when Odell, ran his own route there, Baker didn't know what to do. And I think in that particular play, if it's a different quarterback, that might have been a game-winning touchdown against the Broncos. And maybe that 2019 season goes differently for Cleveland. And if it's a different wide receiver for Baker in that particular situation, maybe they convert the first down and go on and score. For whatever reason, despite all the effort that they both put into it, it just never worked.
Jake, one last question. We have to let you go really quickly. And I know obviously the Browns will release him, but how did leadership handle this? Did they do everything they could do to mend this relationship? Because you've got two special talents, and it's unfortunate how it played out.
Yeah, I mean, I think as of Tuesday, the ship had sailed. I think Cleveland had already decided that they were going to move on. I think Odell Beckham and his camp decided they wanted to move on. They were disappointed he wasn't traded by the deadline. But prior to this week, Odell and Baker put in the work. I mean, Odell flew down to Baker's hometown of Austin, Texas over the summer to work out together. They went to Big Sky, Montana over Labor Day weekend together with their families to build that chemistry on the field and off it. And despite all their efforts they put into it, and they put a lot into it, it just never worked out.
That's great insight, because I hadn't heard that all those flights were made and going away with families to try and repair that relationship. Interesting information there. Jake, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks, guys.
I'll bring back Tim Tebow. Tim, your reaction to what you just heard, what Jake was adding to the conversation.
I believe it. I believe that Odell put in the work. He's a hard worker. That's one of the things that gets kind of missed with Odell is ever since LSU, this dude has been a grinder. He's been someone that would get up early. He's someone that would go to work. He's someone that would grind. And so is Baker. And I've been with him in training and being around him. And both of them are hard workers. And I know they've put in the time. And that's why some of this was shocking to me as well. But another unique thing that I've thought of is, what about Jarvis? Jarvis is super close with Odell, played together in college. He's also close with Baker. How is this pulling him? Now he's going to be by far the number one guy that really has to step up for them. So how is he emotionally? How is he dealing with being probably kind of in the middle of it as a sounding board for the Browns, for Baker, for Odell? And that might be also a unique position for Jarvis.
Well, listen, I think the thing that I peel from Jake, what Jake had to say, is the fact that they had a relationship and Odell was one of his biggest defenders. When did things go wrong and how? Why? That's what we don't know, because I can assure you Baker Mayfield doesn't feel that way about him now. As a quarterback, Baker Mayfield, from my understanding, Odell Beckham Jr., from my understanding, has never spoken against Baker Mayfield, the person. What he said was, you know what? This quarterback and I don't vibe. As a receiver, quarterback, our connection, our cohesion, it ain't there. this ain't the place. That's all the intel that I got. So if that's simply the case, then this personal animus, where would it come from? Or this personal separation? I guess, again, we could go back to egos because, all right, it's Baker Mayfield saying, you don't believe in me, or if it's Odell Beckham Jr. saying, you don't believe in me. That could be problematic because that can change relationships. We definitely understand that. But that seems to be the only thing that makes sense based on what Jake Trotter told us.
Yeah. It seems like, I'm going to bring in Adam Schefter now. Adam, this seems like it was absolutely the right decision and that they tried to repair this relationship. Jake Trotter was telling us that the families went on vacation together. They were flying to different places to practice together in the offseason. So now that it's all said and done and the Browns will release Odell Beckham Jr., Adam, what suitors are we looking at?
Well, it's not a question of basically Odell picking his spot. It's the spot picking him. And he's going to go on waivers at some point, and they're reworking the contract to make it more palatable for a team to claim him on waivers. And that's really been what's happening here. They're converting the remaining, I think it's just over $8 million in base salary into signing bonus. And without getting technical, what that does is it makes it more attractive for another team to claim Odell Beckham Jr. on waivers so that the Browns don't eat all of that $8 million. So whichever team claims him, and I believe he will be claimed, they will be responsible for the reworked contract with whatever is left on the deal that the two sides have agreed to, which they're still trying to finalize. So I don't know what that number is going to be. Let's just call it $2 million. Okay, somewhere in that range, whatever the number is. Every team will have to ask itself, do we want to claim Odell Beckham Jr., who has basically no guaranteed money on his contract next year, and bring him in? And so I'm sure there are going to be places that appeal to Odell Beckham Jr., places that do not appeal to Odell Beckham Jr. Now, if you're an NFL team, you're probably saying to yourself, I don't really care. Go ahead and because then I could consider trading him in the offseason, trading his contract. So maybe I claim him and I trade him for even a 7th-round draft pick. Now, Odell Beckham Jr. is not going to be happy about going to certain places. So this is the idea of the contract that the Browns are restructuring by converting the base salary into signing bonus. Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't have any say there. The Browns can just unilaterally do that by the terms of the collective bargaining agreement. He still has to sign off on the language, which is what they're going through, but it's a situation where he's jammed up and he will not have a choice. He will be put on waivers, and the interesting part will be what his options are if he's claimed by a team and an organization that he doesn't want to go to. Does it get messy then? I think it could. I think it could. Now, if he goes to a place that he welcomes, then all's good. And for the time being, he'll live happily ever after, I guess, for the time being. But the waiver claims surrounding him, the Browns have made it such that they are enticing other teams to claim him on waivers. And I expect that he will be claimed on waivers. And the question is, who is claiming him, and how does that interest or not interest Odell Beckham Jr., and what does he do?
Adam, thanks for being on the show. Let me ask you this. A lot of noise was made about Odell Beckham Jr.'s father going on social media and doing what he did just a few days ago. A lot of people looked at that as a tactic, collaborative tactic on the part of the Beckham clan to get him out of Cleveland. At the end of the day, is that going to end up being the best move he could have made for himself simply because he was desperate to get out of Cleveland? Or based on what you're telling us, it could potentially be considerably worse because he's going to be put on waivers?
Well, look, those things, the father's post the LeBron James tweet, the Marcus Stroman tweet, they all came on the trade deadline day. So you ask yourself if that just all happened by coincidence or it didn't. Okay, now what we can say is that Odell's wanted out of Cleveland for a while. Mm-hmm. He's definitely wanted out of Cleveland for a while. And the Browns had trade discussions on Tuesday with other teams, and they had discussions around the trade deadline with other teams. They just could not agree to terms with anybody else. Now, what I don't understand, I still have to make more calls on, is why didn't Cleveland just say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to take, let's just, I'm making this up. Mm-hmm. Let's just take, I'll trade you Odell Beckham Jr. and a 6 for your 5 to flip draft, like anything, rather than just release him. And they didn't do that. And now, maybe, you know, again, they could not find anybody to satisfy them on trade terms. So now he's going to be going on waivers, and now the now the situation will unfold in a very interesting way to see whether or not he is claimed by an organization that he is comfortable and happy going to, and that'll be interesting to track here. And we also don't know, because they're not done on the contract yet. They're still not done. Nothing has changed since this morning, other than the Browns GM Andrew Berry officially announcing a short time ago that we're finalizing the contract, which we knew, and that as soon as it's finalized, they will release him. Now, we don't know whether that will be today, tomorrow, or Monday. But sometime as early as today, and probably no later than Monday, Odell Beckham Jr. will be waived. He will then go on waivers, and the other 31 teams will have the option to claim him.
Yep. And right then, Adam, we will be calling you back. So sit tight. Thank you so much, Adam Schefter, with the latest on Odell Beckham Jr. being released by the Cleveland Browns. He will be released by them shortly. Adam, thank you again. We're going to have much more on this as this story continues to unfold, but still to come. Stephen A., we've got a lot.
Looks very bad today for all the wrong reasons. Aaron Rodgers is a liar. Period. He lied through his teeth with a smirk on his face regarding a matter that is very, very serious. In light of this, I actually do think Aaron Rodgers should be suspended. I really do.
That was Stephen A. yesterday. He's not the only person disappointed in Rodgers. Much outrage over Aaron not being transparent that he was unvaccinated. Instead, at best, misleading by his word choice, immunized. Aaron Rodgers is sidelined until November 13th at the earliest, the day before the Seattle game after testing positive for COVID. He'll miss Sunday's Chiefs game. Here's his head coach, Matt LaFleur, yesterday.
Hey, Matt, I know earlier you said you're 100% confident in following protocols inside the building. Can you explain why Aaron Rodgers would be allowed to be unmasked for those media availabilities?
That's not what I said. I said within our football space, meeting rooms, walk through everything we do in that area.
Are there different rules for media availability?
I don't pay attention to the media rules.
So there's that. Hello again, Tim Tebow. Great to see your face. Tim, should Rodgers be suspended?
Listen, is what he did misleading? What he said misleading? The way he acted, is it what you would want out of a franchise quarterback and a role model to a lot of young people? Absolutely not. Should he be suspended? Well, I don't think so at all, because if he is, where do you draw the line? So do you draw the line if you're misleading? Well, then guess what? Most coaches are going to get suspended. Do you draw the line in lying? Most people are going to be suspended. You can't do it just based on something that you're passionate about or that's a hot topic or something that's important. Now, if you suspend someone for lying, you suspend everybody for lying. We can't pick and choose what it is. And so I don't think that you could say, hey, we're suspending Aaron Rodgers because he lied. Do you know how many people, when they step in front of the cameras, lie? Right? So now we're just going to pick and choose which ones we care more about that we can suspend. Obviously, it's not right. Obviously, I'm not trying to condone that. But if you say lying is where you get suspended, then guess what? There's going to be a lot of people that are going to get suspended.
Stephen A., that's a great point. What do you think?
Tim Tebow, I respectfully disagree. And everybody knows how I feel about Aaron Rodgers, how fond I am of him. I'm a huge, huge fan, maybe the biggest fan of Aaron Rodgers, but I was incredibly disappointed about this. And I don't get caught up in the vax or unvaccinated. I don't get caught up in all of that when I'm talking about Kyrie Irving. I'm just talking about him and not being available to teammates he lured to Brooklyn. That's what I'm talking about. In the case of Aaron Rodgers, here's what I would say to you. Did he lie? Some people could say no. He was deliberately deceitful because he knew by using the word immunized that the media would assume that he meant, yes, he was vaccinated. Well, guess what? They did. Because here's the reality. When you expose yourself to other players, like we've seen him talking to Kyler Murray and other players who may not have been on your team and may have thought you were vaccinated when in fact you were not, you've now, according to the science, officially endangered somebody else. And that's the point that we're trying to make here. We're not talking about lying. We're not talking because we know people lie all the time. We know coaches lie, players lie, executives lie. We're not talking about that. We're talking about context in terms of what you lied about. You lying about something might be your personal business. You don't feel it's somebody else's business. You don't feel they have a right to know. But when that level of information is something you deny the opportunity for somebody else to know, and then you put them in a position, according to the science, that has endangered them potentially. Now that becomes a bit more serious because there's a level of responsibility that you haven't touched on. If you're that guy, Aaron Rodgers, and you've elected to give people the impression that you were vaccinated when in fact you were not. And I think that's got to be taken into consideration. We've got a situation, Tim, I'm not trying to bring this up because my God, I just pray for the families of everybody involved and pray for Ruggs as well with the horrific accident that he got in. I'm quite sure he didn't mean to kill somebody, man. But the bottom line is this. You on the road and you going 156 miles an hour or something like that. Well, my God, that's going to be taken into consideration as opposed to somebody who wasn't inebriated and wasn't going at that speed and then got into an accident that harmed somebody. Context matters. It does. When you do that, I can't even tell you if Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing football and he wasn't around people, that would be different. But to know what the situation was, to know what the safety protocols were, and to know that you were in violation of it, and you did it anyway, deceitfully, I think that warrants a suspension. And by the way, some volunteer work at one of these hospitals with a bunch of COVID patients. I really do.
No, but that's a very different argument than saying, hey, we need to suspend him for lying. That's suspending him for breaking the rules. And I honestly don't know what rule. I honestly don't know exactly what rules he broke. But honestly, in my opinion, if the NFL's evaluating it, then they shouldn't have let it get to week 7, 8. If he's breaking the rules, why didn't you hear something about it week 1, week 2, week 3? To me, yes, it's a little bit on Aaron, but it's also on the NFL. If you're going to set rules, then make everyone abide by those rules. And then if whatever he's breaking, then, and I don't know exactly what rules of who you're allowed to talk to, when you're allowed to, because there's 462 rules on this. And so I don't know exactly what rules, but then that's got to be where you could suspend someone.
Tim, you got me.
Knowing and then breaking those rules.
You got me, Tim, because here's the point that you made that I just picked up on. I take back everything that I say. If the NFL, because you make a very valid point, if the NFL knew that he was not vaccinated, right? And you still watched him on the field without his mask on, you still watched him going up the players and all of that stuff, and you didn't feel he was in violation of anything, that's a good point. I'm making the assumption based on what they're saying about him not being honest and forthcoming about being vaccinated, that they were fooled too. But if they knew that he wasn't in violation, and if he's not in violation, then everything that I said does not matter. That's absolutely correct.
The NFL would have to know because you have to listen. I wasn't there for long, but I was at least there with the Jags for a little bit, where at least you had to tell them, you had to show your doctor's report, you had to show all of the different things. So I think the NFL and your team would know. I would be blown away.
Absolutely knew. And each club handles it individually. But here's the thing: if we're going to put this all on Aaron Rodgers, who say Aaron Rodgers to this point is going to be suspended, well then the Browns organization needs to be in trouble. There needs to be some culpability for them because they were aware the entire time.
You mean the Packers?
I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm going back to the Odell Beckham. I apologize. got a lot happening here.
Yeah.
Okay, back to what I was saying, though. Stephen A., for Aaron Rodgers, if he's going to be suspended, shouldn't there be punishment for the Packers organization as well? They were aware.
Well, absolutely, which is why I don't like the smugness of Coach Matt LaFleur. See, Matt LaFleur is basically looking at the media as an irritant. Mm-hmm. He's not looking at them and saying, wait a minute, I got a quarterback here that seemed deliberately deceitful. And oh, by the way, I may have been complicit in it as a part of this organization. Who's the head coach? He's looking, it's typical. It's everybody else's fault. The fact of the matter is, this is not listen, let me state this very clearly, Tim. This is not a private matter. Your medical history, your medical records, that's a private matter. The coronavirus pandemic is not a private matter. You walking in the streets and literally walking up to somebody and breathing in their face, according to the science, okay, could potentially contaminate them. Enough said. It's panic mode. And I'm on a plane the other day, Tim, and I'm sitting next to this older white lady that has a mask on or whatever. I've got the mask. I'm on a plane. I've got the mask, but I'm covering my mouth. But it wasn't covering my nose. She said to me, could you cover your nose, please, with the mask? You know what I did, Tim? I immediately covered it. You know why? As irritating as the mask is around my ear, ringing my daggone ear for crying out loud, she's right. I didn't realize I didn't have it covering my nose, but the point is, it doesn't matter how I feel.
Yeah.
She was worried. And the fact that she was worried is all that matters. The level of consideration that people lack for the next human being is the issue in all of this that just continues to just drive me absolutely nuts.
Well, it's because you had respect for her and she had worries, and so you honored her worries and you showed respect for her.
That's right.
But what's most shocking to me about that whole situation is that Stephen A. Smith is flying commercial. Like, that can't happen a lot. Like, was that like really rare and random?
Hold on, Tim. Excuse me, Tim. Actually, I was just on the road with him. Where were we?
Tallahassee.
Tallahassee, and I definitely got a text like, "Are you coming on the private plane?" He had to get back for countdown. Sorry, called my boy out. Love you long time. All right, guys, we got to let Tim go. He has other SEC responsibilities.
Yeah. And I'm sure he was on a private jet, too.
Tim, I did not lie. Tim, thank you so much. Great to have you back with us. We will see you next
Friday.
Friday.
Good being with you guys. See y'all
next week. I did invite
week.
you for the ride.
Love
you, bro.
I
See you next week.
appreciate you. I do appreciate
right.
that. Breaking news into First Take on Odell Beckham's birthday, his 29th. The Browns will release him, and here's a statement from them on that. They put this out just earlier this hour. After careful consideration, internal discussions and conversations with Odell and his representation were determined that it is in the best interest of all parties involved that Odell no longer play for the Cleveland Browns. We appreciate all his efforts and contributions while in Cleveland, but we've just reached a point where it is best that we move forward as a team without Odell. We are finalizing the process of granting Odell his release, and we wish him well as he continues his career. I'm going to assume that he is happy with this. This is a birthday present for him. Ryan Clark, who obviously knows Odell well, the LSU connection there. Ryan, what was your reaction to this?
My reaction is that this could be a little bit more than what it seems from the outside. And I know everybody's going to come on, oh, he's defending Odell, saying Odell is not being a distraction. Well, he actually is. And this actually looks worse on Odell than it does the Cleveland Browns. At least from the outside, it almost seems that he forced his way out of Cleveland. Now, I've already said that, so I can tell you what I feel. I know Jarvis Landry spoke to the team personally without the coaches, and I'm not necessarily sure what went on in that meeting, but we have to remember that Jarvis Landry is the energy of this team. Jarvis Landry is the leader of this offense. Jarvis Landry is the guy that this team looks to for direction. And in that direction, we also had to remember who Jarvis Landry is to Odell Beckham Jr. It's not just his best friend. It's not just one of the guys he went to school with. This is a dude that he was roommates with, someone he's been close to since high school. And so if there's anything that's underlying in that Cleveland Browns locker room, in that Cleveland Browns building, that Odell Beckham Jr. was in any way wronged or was in any way targeted, I think that can become an issue. That can become an issue with chemistry. That can become an issue with the opportunities of the relationship to not only go from the locker room to the football field, but from the football field to wins. And that is an extremely important thing for me. If you remember when Odell Beckham Jr. left New York, every single teammate backed Odell Beckham Jr. Every single teammate talked about his loyalty, how good of a person he was, how good of a teammate he had been. And now in this situation, you get guys like John Johnson, the starting safety, saying, you know what, if Odell could come back, if they could make it work, the majority of the dudes would want this. Another player, if Odell is here, we welcome him with open arms. So this isn't a situation going to be painted that Odell Beckham Jr. was a cancer or was in some way an issue in the locker room. Now, if the football couldn't work, then cool. If the video is too much, then cool. But be sure to know that there's more than one side to this story.
Well, first of all, my brother, even though we're discussing a serious topic, let me get on you for a quick second here, Mr. LSU. I know that you got the LSU connection, and I know that you know Odell Beckham Jr. very, very well. But don't act like you don't watch First Take all the time, because you heard me saying exactly what you said. So don't act like, you know what, you got to come on here and defend Odell Beckham Jr. You don't act like you got to come on here to defend Odell Beckham Jr. because nobody else is defending him. That's exactly what has been happening. You know I've been talking about it because here's the deal. Here's the deal, okay? That's right. Come to his defense because he deserves it in all seriousness, like what you're saying. If this is something off the field, if this is a personality issue or what have you, first of all, we don't know that to be Odell Beckham Jr.'s fault. And on the field, we've had enough people that said he's been open. Now, over the last couple of weeks, dropping them damn passes, that did not make him look good, particularly when you've been whining about the fact that you ain't getting the ball thrown enough to you. Once it comes to your direction, you got to catch those passes. There's no doubt about it. But what I pointed to earlier this week, and I really want to come back at you with this because I want you to educate our viewers about this. I talked about the spirit of football. And the reason why I talked about it, because you know how Odell Beckham Jr. talks. Affects my soul, my spirit. It ain't right. I'm not feeling it, et cetera, et cetera. When you don't feel like that vibe is there, that connection and that cohesion is there, that relationship is what it's supposed to be, the synergy on the football field and in practice. And if you don't feel like you're getting the ball thrown to you in practice, you damn sure don't expect it to get thrown to you in a game. And so you go on the field with a level of demoralization that has already kicked in because you're like, yo, this is what I've been dealing with all week. Why the hell should I expect anything better on game day? And because of that, to me, I think that has had a profound effect on what we haven't seen from Odell Beckham Jr. as well in terms of his body language. As a result, you're Baker Mayfield. You might feel a bit disenchanted or lacking some level of motivation to throw him the football and take those chances. And I think things snowballs from there. But to me, it comes down to the relationship that never was between those two guys. I want to know, A, do you agree with that? And B, who do you hold most accountable for that reality?
You know what? I agree with that to an extent, that the relationship ended up not being there. But I don't necessarily believe it started that way. I think Baker Mayfield wanted this to work. Why would he not want it to work? One of the more explosive wide receivers of his era. And I know Odell Beckham Jr. wanted it to work because now the perception will be, and you already know because expectations bleed into perception, is that Odell Beckham Jr. caused this all by himself. Ooh, Odell had to get traded from New York. We already predicted that this could be a bad deal in Cleveland. Baker Mayfield is better without him. So all of those things are going to lead people to think that this is on Odell Beckham Jr. and Odell Beckham Jr. alone, but it's not. Wide receiver is the most dependent position in football. No matter how open I am, no matter how good I can play, if I don't get the ball thrown to me, and if I don't get the ball thrown to me well, that's an issue. And if we don't feel that chemistry, if we don't have that relationship, if we've actually had conversations about this thing not working, then Sundays are going to be difficult. But we have to be honest and we have to be fair. Sundays are not only going to be difficult for the wide receiver, they can also be difficult for the quarterback. And that's the decision that GM Andrew Berry is making. Now, I think that Baker Mayfield is as much to blame in this, if not more, than Odell Beckham Jr. But that doesn't absolve Odell of any wrongdoing, or I don't want to say wrongdoing, of any accountability, of any responsibility. This was time for this to end. But I think my biggest and largest point is when you look at the way people deal with Odell within his team, he doesn't normally have these issues with teammates.
That's fine.
But it's going to be Odell Beckham Jr. again. And I think that's wrong for anybody to approach it this way, Stephen A.
That's fair. And I agree with you. My question to you is, because of what his father did in social media and because of the way he's now departed from Cleveland, we know that at the end of the day, this was the end game. Get me the hell out of Cleveland. You heard it? He would have preferred to get traded to another team that's contending right now. Okay, the Green Bays of the world, the LA Rams of the world, places like that. Kansas City, he would have Tampa Bay. He would have preferred all of that. That's not what happened. So in light of how he's departed from Cleveland, do you think he'll end up regretting that this happened in terms of how his departure was handled?
It's a good question.
Absolutely not. Because he had to go, and you got to do it any kind of way that you could get there. I don't think it's the right way to do it. I can be honest about saying that, Stephen A., but the end result is the end result. He needs to be in a different place, and he knew that time was ticking on this thing, Stephen A., and he's hoping to get an opportunity this year to disprove the Odell is done or the Odell is washed rumors and show people that he can still flat out play.
That was a good question, Stephen A., the hindsight question, because I think about the New York Giants. Maybe he wouldn't mind being with the New York Giants. And I know Danny Dime, I know Stephen A., but still, staying in New York, I don't want to say that facial expression. It wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. You said he likes the shine. RC, I'll ask you this before we move on. Right now, because he did kind of force his way out of the Giants, and now with Cleveland as well, if you're sitting down with him, what is your advice to him moving forward, and where would you be trying to go?
My first advice would be 3 strikes and you're out. He doesn't get another opportunity after this. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt anymore. The next one has to work. It has to work on the field. It has to work off of the field. And the next thing would be go somewhere where you're going to get the rock. Go somewhere where you believe in the quarterback. And I think when Cleveland came up, he believed in Baker Mayfield. It just didn't work. But whether that's a Mac Jones, whether that's a Derek Carr, whether it's a Lamar Jackson, whoever it is, believe in that quarterback. Believe in that coaching staff and believe in that team. And maybe you can be the Antonio Brown piece to what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ended up needing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and having the mindset that you're going to make it work no matter what. Absolutely. 3 strikes and you're out. You heard RC. Okay, we'll leave it there. Ryan's with us the rest of the way. Up ahead. What?
You mentioned the Giants, Ryan.
What? Maybe, Stephen A., would it have been so bad to stay with the New York Giants?
No, but it would be bad to be with him now.
All right. Goodbye.
I'm just saying.
I have to go to break.
No worse than he is now, Stephen.
Phoenix Suns owner Robert Sarver is accused of overseeing an organization that many employees have described as toxic and sometimes hostile. A report from ESPN's Baxter Holmes reveals Holmes interviewed more than 70 former and current Suns employees who have been part of the team throughout Sarver's 17-year tenure. Now, according to the report, Sarver has used racially insensitive and lewd language repeatedly in the office and displayed conduct employees recount as inappropriate and misogynistic. Multiple current and former employees also told ESPN about conduct by other members of the Suns leadership team they felt contributed to the work environment. While none said Sarver was involved in those incidents, many felt that Sarver's own conduct contributed to that culture that affected how some other managers within the organization treated their employees. In the ESPN report, Sarver denied or disputed most of the allegations throughout his legal team. The Suns also strongly denied the report in a lengthy statement released Thursday. Also on Thursday, the NBA has asked a law firm to commence a comprehensive investigation. Brian Windhorst joining us now, NBA insider. Wendy, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I'm going to start with you, though, Stephen A. Do you think Sarver has to go?
Well, that depends on the NBA's investigation. I would tell you that based off of what I read, it's hard to get rid of him because the accusations are incredibly damning. But he's denied most of them. And because he's denied most of them, people who try to compare it to Donald Sterling are missing the point that you had Donald Sterling on audio. You heard what he said. And then on top of it all, he did an interview with CNN thereafter with Anderson Cooper, if I remember correctly, that was just as incriminating. And so when you have people that are standing up and saying, as black folks, he's got to go. From LeBron James to Melo and D. Wade to Chris Paul, who was president of the Players Association, while playing for Donald Sterling, well, you know that had to happen. In this case, here's where it gets a bit tricky. There is clearly where there's smoke, there's fire, there's clearly some inappropriate stuff, some of the things that he has said, some of the sexual innuendos he threw out, showing pictures of his wife in a bikini, the women that were made to feel incredibly uncomfortable along with some of the use of the N-word. Eric Watson says, Watson says, hey.
Earl Watson.
Earl Watson,
Yep.
that's right. Earl Watson
says,
listen, this is what he said, you can't say that. You can't say that stuff. And clearly, you know what, he has some bitterness towards Robert Sarver, but that don't make him false. The problem is, it's a lot of he said, she said. And so as a result, it does warrant an internal investigation. There is no question about that. But speaking to the league office last night with them telling me that, hey, we're going to investigate this. We're not going to jump to conclusions. Remember, this is an owner. And people keep forgetting that with Donald Sterling, Adam Silver banned him for life. But forcing him to sell the team, you needed the owners to sign off on that. That's just not a unilateral decision that can be handed down by Adam Silver in the league. So for people who are screaming about that with Sarver, that's pretty hard to do. And let's not forget, me as a black man sitting up here, at this particular moment, he's got a black coach. He's got a black GM. 6 of his 10 coaches, it's pathetic that he's had that many coaches in his tenure. That says a lot about him. But 6 to 10 of them have been black. And so when you talk about diversity and what have you, I don't know the numbers because I have not looked them up within his organization, but he clearly has not been averse to hiring minorities. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you take all of these things into consideration. I think the 2 damning things against him is the misogyny.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. The misogyny and did some of the inappropriate remarks and behavior. I just don't know if that equates to him having to surrender ownership of the team. He might have to incur a stiff fine like Mark Cuban had to because of what was happening with the Dallas Mavericks. But that was happening within the Dallas Mavericks organization. In this case, it's Sarver himself who has been accused of these actions.
But a little bit of that, too, because they said it affected how the culture and how other managers managed based on him from the top down.
Yeah, but with Mark Cuban, they just say, look, he oversaw me in his organization. With Sarver, they say, no, it's that guy.
Yeah, no, it's Sarver, but with some tentacles.
Right.
Wendy, your thoughts? Do you think he needs to go?
So this all really came, the short-term future for Robert Sarver came down to Monty Williams last night here in Phoenix. Monty Williams, maybe outside of Greg Popovich, has more capital than probably any other NBA head coach right now. He's coming off a finals appearance. He's incredibly well respected by players, by management, by ownership. And what he was going to say before the game, because he wouldn't comment on this when the Suns first denied these reports 2 weeks ago. He basically said, I'm going to stand and wait for the story to come out. How Monty handled that story was going to set the tone not only for his players, but probably for the rest of the organization. And what Monty did is essentially what Stephen A. just said. He said, I'm going to wait for the investigation. He said, I'm not going to call Earl Watson. I'm going to wait to see what happens. Now, and basically Chris Paul and Devin Booker came out after the game and said the exact same thing. Now, sitting there in the room, and being here in Phoenix, I would tell you that if Monty had gone the other direction and said, hey, listen, and went against Robert Sarver, this could have snowballed real fast. And I don't think that they would have, forced him to sell the team, but he could have been suspended or had to step away. Monty saying, let the investigation play out, turned the temperature down on this whole situation. Now, I was kind of interested in the fact that he didn't say, listen, regardless of he said, there's no place for this word in the NBA. There's no place in this word from ownership to players. And if that is true, there's no place for anybody in the league who says that. I wish Devin Booker or Chris Paul would have said something like, I feel so bad that there are people in our organization who obviously spoke to ESPN who felt like they weren't comfortable working for this team either in the past or even today.
Wendy.
But they basically just punted on to the investigation.
Excuse me 1 second, because I heard you on the Overnight Sports Center, and I heard you said that he punted, but I don't feel like that's totally true. Because if you heard Monty Williams in his entirety in the opening statement, he said, if you know me, and essentially if you know me and my character, if I knew any of this was going on, I would not be here right now. So he did condemn the behavior. Monty Williams did with his opening statement.
Kind of.
In my opinion, he did.
Okay. I think all of them, and by the way, the tone got set from the Players Association. In the afternoon, the Players Association said, we're going to wait for the investigation. Once I saw that, I knew what was going to happen here. I knew they were all in alignment. And I think one of the things that was an issue here is that, as Stephen A. said, in the past, the standard, whether it was Donald Sterling or Bruce Levinson, who owned the Atlanta Hawks and sent an insensitive email that contributed to him selling the team, to John Gruden. The expectation today is if it's not, on video or undocumented, that we have to step back. And that's just the reality. The other thing is, 2 weeks ago, the Suns knew this was coming, and I've been with them on and off for 2 weeks, home and road. They have been under stress, expecting the worst, preparing for a Sterling tape situation. And when that didn't happen, it sort of caused them to say, let's just wait. And that is a responsible thing to say. But I do think that they punted, Molly, because I think that they had an opportunity to set the tone to say this is not acceptable, and we'll see what's true.
I know
and
Stephen
instead
A.
they said,
wants to
we'll
get in
hear
here.
from the NBA.
I'm going to say a couple of things that might ruffle a few people's feathers, but I really don't care. You know me. Let me be very clear about where I stand as it pertains to some of the things that Sarver has been accused of. Clearly, particularly in this day and age, you should know better than spewing the N-word. We all understand that. I personally am far more concerned with the misogyny that they said he was exhibiting. And you've got women that were talking about wanting to commit suicide working for this organization.
That affected their mental health.
Their mental health was severely compromised. To me, even though I don't condone nor approve of any white person using the word, when you come into a locker room and you say, why is it that this player could say the word, but I can't say it? To me, as stupid and as egregious and as irresponsible as that is, that pales in comparison to forcing people want to commit suicide. So that's number one. Number two, this is what we also have to take into consideration. James Jones, the GM, came out and said, I've never seen this behavior. Monty Williams said, if you know me, I wouldn't be here. I've never seen this behavior. Chris Paul has given no indication, nor Devin Booker, that they've seen that behavior. And on top of it all, somebody that is a champion, that has been around, that, to be quite honest with you, is one of the nicest people most of us have met in this business, Brian Windhorst. Coach Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors was the former GM of the Phoenix Suns. He said he was shocked to hear this because in his years of being with the organization, he never saw anything like that. I don't know about anybody else, but Steve Kerr's words matter to me. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and then I couple that with the absence of video or audio showing and displaying this kind of behavior, is an investigation warranted? Absolutely. Does some kind of reprimand needs to come down? Absolutely. Does he need to fall back and somebody else needs to be at least the face of this organization in a public stratosphere so you don't have to, you could deal with him in another way? Sure. But when people talk about confiscation of ownership of a franchise where other owners who are not black outside of Michael Jordan in the NBA, by the way, okay, these other owners are supposed to vote him out and not want him to be a part of their ownership clique, the board of governors and all of that other stuff. I hate to say it to people, but you need more evidence than that to do something like that. You can't be conjecture, hearsay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is essentially what Monty Williams and Chris Paul and Devin Booker said. You're right alongside them. What I will say is this, something that I was surprised about. I asked Monty Williams, I said, when you took this job 3 years ago, you had other options. The Los Angeles Lakers were sitting there saying, come here with LeBron James, and he took the Suns job. And I said, how much did ownership influence your decision? Because ownership in a lot of cases is one of the most important things in the NBA. And he said it influenced it a lot. That his, not only did he stand back from, condemning and basically said with Robert Sarver, he said that he came to Phoenix in part because of Robert Sarver, and that his relationship with him and the way he's worked with him these last 2+ seasons has been why they've been successful here.
Let me tell you this. Let us not escape what Earl Watson said about Sarver giving him 10 days to make a decision about dropping Clutch Sports and Rich Paul. Otherwise, you're going to lose your job. He had no business doing that. If there's any truth to that, that's a very egregious thing for him to do on his part. You have people talking about how difficult he is. I personally, as I know you have, Wendy, have spoken to numerous agents that consider him a problem at times because rather than leave the executives to, the GM, James Jones, and others to negotiate deals, he steps in and tries to do it himself, even though he scaled back on that a little bit. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all of those things are egregious. It calls for a guy. It shines a light on a guy in terms of his personality, the kind of person he is, the kind of person you want to be associated with or may not want to be. All of those things is true. It does not amount to you saying you can no longer own your team. That is a huge, huge step to take. And in order for the NBA to do that, you got to have more evidence that has been presented because he has denied a whole bunch of that stuff.
They're conducting a comprehensive investigation.
You better be able to prove it.
We'll see what they find.
You better be able to prove it.
Wendy, we do need to let you go, but back to our earlier conversation really quickly. Yes, punted I thought was a little bit strong, but I do agree with you from this fact. I think they absolutely, in a perfect world, you're right. If he's going to disseminate the message and the players are going to be in lockstep, they should have condemned the behavior, if true, 100% before saying, let's just get the facts and playing it safe. You are 100% right in that. We will let you go, Wendy.
Go
ahead.
Right, have a good weekend.
No. You give us your final word here. Okay.
I would just say that it's a tough situation because Earl Watson is a guy who Devin Booker really likes and admires. And he was put in a tough position here to choose between something he doesn't know and a man that he really respects. And I could sense his difficulty in handling this. And that is one of the reasons why I think those guys didn't go that route, because they felt like they were in a box and they were like, look, we're just going to try to play basketball.
And the other thing, too, is that some of the racial connotations that exist in the article, you are talking about two black guys, a head coach and a general manager in Monty Williams and James Jones, with a new guy in Chris Paul, who, not new, but he's been around for a long time and just gets a $120 million deal. They've basically been handed the franchise, and you don't see that happen too often in the NBA. So when people are talking about this racial stuff, they're like, damn, if they didn't see it, it's pretty hard to come out and say, oh, this is unacceptable, and just like really give the impression that you're bringing the hammer down on somebody who's giving them opportunities that a lot of other teams haven't done in terms of that collaboration that they put together in Phoenix. We got to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely sure we'd all agree that Monty Williams would not have stood for any of that behavior happening in that culture. Man. No. Wendy, you're the best. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Wendy, thanks.
When we come back on First Take, happy birthday, Odell Beckham. You've gotten. Welcome back to First Take. Our breaking news of the day. The Cleveland Browns say they will release Odell Beckham Jr. For more on this story, Mary Kay Cabot joins us now, who does an exceptional job covering this team for Cleveland.com. Mary Kay, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with this. You reported that OBJ wanted to be traded multiple times. Mary Kay, what can you add to that?
Well, yes, he has asked to be traded several times. The first time, or at least the first time this season, was in the offseason. So this is not something new. This is something that started sometime in the offseason, but they really couldn't trade him in the offseason. And I believe that they would have been open to doing that. But he had already had a $12.79 million guarantee that was triggered, and not many teams were going to pick up that salary for a player coming off of a torn ACL.
Mary Kay, thank you for being on the show. That nugget of information sparks me to ask this question. The fact that Odell Beckham Jr. asked for a trade in the offseason, so much noise has been made about the lack of chemistry that exists between him and Baker Mayfield. Is it possible that that's really what's going on this particular season? That Baker Mayfield was aware that Odell Beckham Jr. wanted out. And obviously, there's some personal feelings that developed from Odell Beckham Jr. wanting to be traded and away from this quarterback.
Well, that probably does factor in. I mean, these guys were trying to repair their relationship, and I think they had done a pretty good job of having a meeting of the minds in the offseason. I know they had some conversations, and they were working on it. I mean, Odell went to Baker Mayfield's Camp Mayfield down in Austin. He went to Montana with him when some players went out there. So these two were working on it. They knew that this season was dependent upon, at least it seemed like it was at the time, dependent upon them flourishing together. But ultimately, that just didn't work out. Now, I think another thing that was a factor in some of this is that the Browns expected Odell to play in Kansas City in the opener, and he did not feel ready. And I think that was the first sign that something was off.
Mary Kay, let me ask you this. What teams have you heard have interest in Odell Beckham?
Well, the only team that I knew for sure was interested at the time of the trade deadline were the New Orleans Saints. Now, they weren't able to reach a deal, so that's one to keep an eye on there. But, you know, I think the Browns have to be aware that, I mean, the Chiefs could possibly get interested, depending on if the price is right. I would think maybe the Raiders now could possibly be interested. And then, you know, what if the Ravens swoop in and decide to pull a little power play there for their upcoming couple of games this season against the Cleveland Browns? So it could get very interesting.
Mary Kay, I know that I've been told that Baker Mayfield is a pretty popular dude in Cleveland amongst its fan base. But I'm wondering if that same thing exists inside that locker room, particularly with Odell Beckham Jr. now basically being gone. Is this a situation where you have some individuals inside that locker room on the offensive side of the ball that are raising their proverbial eyebrows at Baker Mayfield as opposed to Odell Beckham Jr. because of all that's transpired?
You know, I don't see that happening. I think that Baker and Odell did a pretty good job of presenting a united front. So this wasn't divisive, and it really wasn't personal that much either. It was really more about a disconnect on the football field. And then all of a sudden, as each week went by, it was trending in the wrong direction where Baker just wasn't looking at him at all. So, you know, that was nobody's imagination. It was happening on the field. But I think the players will do a good job of rallying around Baker Mayfield. Now, he's playing hurt, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think that these guys will be professional and they'll pull together. Having said that, this locker room loved Odell Beckham Jr.
That's a great note to hear, that this locker room loved Odell Beckham Jr. Really interesting stuff. Mary Kay Cabot, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mary Kay.
Of course. And obviously, we'll bring Ryan Clark back now, too. Also interesting, she said he had asked for a trade multiple times. Mary Kay Cabot breaking that today. RC, your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, you know, hearing that he'd ask for a trade, it shows that he understood the relationship issues. He understood that the on-the-field stuff wasn't working and maybe some things behind the scenes as well. But the Cleveland Browns GM Andrew Berry and Odell Beckham's team obviously kept this extremely quiet. What this tells me is that this could have been a much uglier situation than everything you're hearing from Odell Beckham Jr. as he's giving interviews. And also Baker Mayfield has to get some credit for this as well. They hid this from the public. But now you see that this is an issue that has been long overdue to be fixed, that has been long overdue to be corrected. And I think you got to the point with this season going the way it was, Odell Beckham Jr. playing hard, feeling like he wasn't getting opportunities. I think he'd had enough. And listen, when O Senior posted that video, he don't get to post that just because he's the dad, right? He don't run the show. He ain't paying the bills. And so, you know, if that was allowed to come out, that was strategic. Now Odell Beckham Jr. finally gets out. Odell Beckham Jr. gets to go right whatever wrong people are going to feel like he continued or brought with him from New York, and that is now in Cleveland, and obviously got him, I guess, released or cut in the meantime. But for Odell Beckham Jr., he has to know, ain't no more chances. There ain't gonna be no more chances to show people you're a star. There won't be any more chances to show people that you could fit in. It doesn't matter how many reports we hear about locker rooms loving him or how many former teammates come out and applaud the person that he is. We know what the perception is gonna be. The New York Giants chose to trade this transcendent talent. The Cleveland Browns picked Baker Mayfield, a quarterback we don't even know can be a franchise guy, over you as well. At some point, Odell Beckham Jr. has to realize that his perception will eventually be reality.
Well, that last part about Baker Mayfield, I'm not going to go too far with that because this is the same Cleveland Browns franchise that hired Freddie Kitchens because Baker Mayfield wanted him hired. So that's I don't know how much level of credibility they have in that regard. But I will say this. I will say this to you. That what really stands out in my mind is the fact that, again, Odell Beckham Jr. wanted out. And to me, it's like I'm wondering who made the mistake. Was he too late in letting Cleveland know that he wanted to be traded once the 12.9 or whatever number kicked in and teams were going to have to pay that for a guy coming off an injury? Should he have made that demand earlier, or did he make that demand earlier and it wasn't obliged by the Cleveland Browns, and this comes back to bite them because it's potentially disrupt their season? Remember, guys, over the next 4 weeks, the Cleveland Browns play Cincinnati, New England, and Baltimore.
Tough schedule.
That's 3 of their next 4 games.
Yeah.
They could easily be out of the mix within the next 2 to 3 weeks if they ain't careful. So we'll see what happens.
Of course. Let's take an Odell break. You know what I want to talk about? The Dallas Cowboys, best team in the NFC according to the man. And here's just a few of the matchups. Our appearance at FAMU's homecoming must have brought good luck as they blew out Grambling. This week they stood up against Southern, and we have Atlanta bragging rights on the line as Morehouse takes on Clark. So enjoy those games. To the Cowboys, Southern Steve. Dak Prescott's calf strain doesn't look like it'll hold him back for too long. The Cowboys quarterback was a full participant in practice yesterday. Seems to be back on track to play against the Broncos. Ryan Clark back here with us. But Stephen A., you are up first. Try to be objective here. Could you do that for me? Should the Cowboys be more conservative with Dak, and should they sit him another week?
I mean, it's not a matter of conservative or anything like that. I'm just saying. I mean, you the Dallas Cowboys, you won 6 straight. You 6-1. You playing in a weak division. This the NFC least. You got nothing to worry about here. I mean, you got one team in the New York Giants that don't really have a team. You got another team in the Washington football team that don't even have a name. And you got the Philadelphia Eagles that got their issues, okay? The bottom line is you're the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, it's a cakewalk. What you rushing back for? What you rushing Dak Prescott back for?
Like
there's no need for that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know what? Cooper Rush came up in there, had a good game against the Minnesota Vikings. Now it's the Denver Broncos. All right, not that Von Miller played last week, but he ain't gonna play this week. He's in Los Angeles now. I mean, what's the problem? I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned,
wake me up when it's over.
It's another week off for the Dallas Cowboys. As far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to play Dak Prescott. There's really no reason.
Stephen A.,
cut
it out. Just cut it out, man. Well, this is what happened. You spent so much time covering that much softer, much more tentative, much more passive sport that you don't even understand how football works anymore. So let me explain it to you, right? Like, we don't load manage in football, because there's only 17 games and every game is important. And we don't have guys sit on the bench in their Superfly outfits because they need a break or they need some rest, or we know we got 81 other games to play. That's not how it works in football. In football, if your guy is healthy, you play him, because any given Sunday, you can lose a game. And when you lose that game, and now it takes you from being the team that has an opportunity to have the first week bye to being in second place or to being a game behind. And you don't allow that to happen. Yes, Cooper Rush looked good last week. Does that mean that Cooper Rush is going to be great this week against the Denver Broncos? Does that mean that Cooper Rush gives you a better opportunity to win even over a 90% Dak Prescott? No, Stephen A., that's not how it works. You don't just sit out in the NFL and hope for the future. In the NFL, it's about the present,
Ryan Clark,
right? Because it's not for long. Ain't that what it means? Not for long. You want to wait too long, Stephen A.?
May I ask you a question? May I ask you a question? And by the way, when I ask you a question, be happy I'm not asking you a question. Be questioned. I'm not asking you a question about that one damn earpiece. You should have two, but that's neither here nor there. Here's my question. Here's my question to you. Are you saying here with a straight face that load management doesn't take place in the NFL?
Yes, I absolutely am saying that.
So when a team has a comfortable lead or they've clinched their division crown and they elect not to play, players for a couple of weeks because you know what, we got the playoffs coming up, right? That's not load management.
Stephen A., Ain't nobody talking about resting somebody from game 79 to game 82 in basketball and then going into the playoffs. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those early months, those early games when the player's nicked up or you have a back-to-back where you sit a guy. We don't do that in football. I don't care if you're 44 like Tom Brady or you're 24 like Lamar Jackson.
Even when you 6-1, 3 games ahead of your opponent in a weak division, and you got a quarterback that had a nasty injury last year, and then now he's back this year playing lights out. But you want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Stephen A., they held him out last week because he was injured. If you're injured, you do not play. If you are hurt, you play. If not, they will work on first take with us.
Yeah. Okay, load management, we got to go.
Okay. He's lying. He's lying. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. It's okay.
I like your turtleneck.
Not like your favorite quarterback. Still ahead Monday
you like
night.
The outfit. That's
it's the Steelers. I get you wins and I get you paid with the help of Ryan Clark and Stephen A. Smith. So, Mr. Smith, you are up first. Will Jamar Chase have a touchdown Sunday against the Browns?
Yes.
Yes, he's had one in 6 of 8.
He's a bad brother. I have no doubt he will.
I'm with you. No need to expound. Ryan, will Josh Allen throw for over 300 yards against the Jags?
Yes, he will. He will have a great day against the Jaguars, and the Buffalo Bills will blow them out.
I agree with you. Easy money, 14.5-point favorite for Buffalo. Stephen A., will your guy Najee Harris, this one I'm not so sure about, rush for 90 yards against the Bears? He's done that twice so far this season.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I think if you're going to move the football against the Chicago Bears defense, it's going to have to be throwing the football. I don't believe Najee's going to do that because I'm still not sold on that offensive line. Not him. I love him. It's the offensive line I got questions about, even though they've improved.
All right, kind of staying with your team here. Ryan, in that same game, who will have more total yards? Obviously, one guy would probably be with his legs, one with his arms, but Big Ben or Justin Fields?
I think it'll be Justin Fields because I think Justin Fields understood last week that using his legs to create plays is going to be the most helpful tool that he has. And with that and making some opportunities in the pass game, he'll probably have more total yards than Ben Roethlisberger's, but probably not passing yards.
All right, I got another easy money one for you, Stephen A. Will Cooper Kupp have over 100 receiving yards against Tennessee, who does not have King Henry, Adrian Peterson they signed?
Yes, because I think that the offense on the Tennessee side of the ball will struggle a little bit without Derrick Henry. That'll give the offense of the Rams more bites at the apple, and they'll be able to capitalize off of it eventually. I think he'll get it by default.
All right, that'll do it for Molly's deal. Just trying to help you out here. Ryan, you can see me, right? Okay. So you know how Stephen A. is kind of always fashion police, right? You know how he always does that, right? The fashion police. I kind of have a bone to pick with him, so I want to play a little clip. I'd like to get your reaction to that, too. Do we have that, producers? Okay, cool. Let's play that.
Hey, Marcus, you saw what Molly came in with? You know what I'm saying? This is what Molly came in with. You know?
S.A., she wore that. She was Molly, did you ride a Harley for real? Molly.
So, RC, everybody's got jokes. So I was just wondering if Stephen A. rode his Harley in today. So
hey,
I got this for you. Here you go. Just want to make sure you have this.
I was just about to say,
in case you wrote that.
Is this trying to come back at me? Is she trying to come back at me? I actually like this.
Hey, we see you, Grease Lightning.
What y'all trying to hate on me? Y'all trying to hate on me? Is that what it is?
I was just wondering, did you wear your helmet on your Harley when you rode in today?
You know what? First of all, I don't like motorcycles too much. I mean, I think it's very, very dangerous. But I do have the look. I will give that to you. But if I wore a helmet, it wouldn't be this one. It would be all black. It wouldn't be all of this stuff up here.
It would be all black. Everything. Okay.
You know?
Oh my gosh.
We know.
Why is Ryan trying to act like he's got some style? He's got a white shirt and a white earpiece. I mean, why is he trying to do that? Why is he trying to do that? You know what I'm saying?
He's at his house. It's on a Friday.
I'm just saying.
You're casual Friday. And why does his earpiece annoy you so much?
Because he got one. Most people watch have two. He got one. Why?
Get him a new earpiece. You're just mad about the color. Ryan, it distracts him.
It's an IFB, okay? It's not one of my beats. You know what I'm saying?
He's mad about it. All right.
It's two of those.
Listen. It was an exceptional week. Odell Beckham, make a bet. Where's he going? If you were a betting man.
L.A.
Okay. RC?
Las Vegas.
Mm.
Not bad.
Tampa.
Not bad. Ain't Tampa.
Why?
Ooh.
Tom
Tampa.
Brady
He goes
is
to
the
Tampa.
person that would pull that off.
Godwin and those boys gonna be so
Antonio
ticked
Brown's
off.
banged up. Come on.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm just saying because again, you expected Antonio Brown to be back. You expected Gronk to eventually be back. You already got the weapons that you have. You add Odell Beckham Jr. That takes some stuff away from other guys.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's too much.
Tom Brady will play at least 50
they
if that
understand it. They got
happens.
enough
All right,
harmony
RC,
in
have
that-
a
in that
fabulous
skill-
weekend.
skill
We'll be
player
here
room.
Monday to
Thank
break
you.
it all down. Be safe on the Harley, Steve.
Yes, I try. I'll try.